Now, what we're going to be doing and talking about here in first is we're going to talk about North Carolina. And we're going to look at some different properties that have sold over the last couple of months in a couple of different areas, and also go over an overview of how North Carolina works, because there's kind of a little trick with North Carolina that most people don't know about.
Yeah, North Carolina is classified as a tax deed state, meaning that they have a redemption period they wait out, and then the county forecloses on the property. One of the big differences with North Carolina, I mean, they use premium bidding just like many other states do. They have live auctions and I don't know if they have any online auctions yet. Now that I'm thinking about it, but
They have a couple that they do through. So occasionally they will, but they do them through one of the public surpluses, and so I'll include them. I think there's a couple of them right now, but they don't. There's not any of the big sales.
yeah, that makes sense. The one thing that is a little bit different about what they do, though, is what they call an upset bid. And upset bids are essentially their way of closing out auctions. When you place a high bid for a period of 10 days, another bidder can come and increase or upset your bid, as the winning bidder. And so the basically the end of the auction tends to go from upset bidder to upset bidder until the high bid is established, which obviously it takes a little bit of time because there's that 10-day window of time, where anybody could place a higher bid, but it also kind of creates a secondary investment opportunity for investors, to pick up properties that already went to the auction.
Yeah, exactly. So there's kind of drawbacks, but there's some positives as well. Obviously, if you do the upset bid, that gives us an opportunity to, in many of these areas, to bid on property without actually attending the auction. And so that's a strategy that some of our students are implementing in some of these areas. Now, if it does go to an upset bid, or what that upset bid is, it's right after the sale for up to 10 days, anyone can go ahead and submit an offer. Now, the offer needs to be 10% for the first $1,000 and 5% per thousand after that. I've also seen some areas where they've done 750 to 10%, but essentially you need to do a little bit more of a bid than was the original bid amount. And then what will happen is that will set up another 10-day period. So there's properties. In fact, we even include some of the upset bid list on our auction calendar, because these are still going to be available. These are still kind of in the process of being sold. So sometimes you'll see these, and it may take us a couple of months before the high bidder is essentially established. Sometimes the properties will go ahead and win and nobody will do an upset bid. But it does kind of hinder the fact that you're not going to automatically acquire the property if you're that high bidder. But it also gives us a chance to bid on some of these properties even if we didn't attend the auction.
Yeah, especially, I mean, something else that's interesting about North Carolina is they have a lot of small sales. They're smaller sales that they tend to have. And I don't know if that's just uh, the counties here, but there tends to be a little bit smaller sales, and they're mostly conducted in person still. So, for instance, if you live in the North Carolina area, then absolutely there are sales, that you could attend in person, to participate, and you're just limited to competing against whoever else is, probably some other locals that have been attending that sale for a while, but not going to be competing with people nationwide. So there can be some good opportunities in those sales to pick up properties.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go look at some properties that have sold recently in the tax sale. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at a number of different properties that essentially have sold. This first one here ended up selling this last month. It's a single family home. We can see some of the information about it. The county has an assessed value of about $60,000 on it. We can see it's about 1,200 square feet, built in 1975. Now, this property ended up selling for $11,500, and we'll look into a little bit of the property details.
Yeah, that seems pretty cheap. I mean, it's not that old.
Now, one thing that's kind of interesting, and we're going to look at some that are currently on the market, but this one actually sold. And we can kind of tell by looking at this information what happened to this property. So this was purchased in October of 2025, and it sold in November of 2025. It may have been purchased in the end of September when it finally went through.
Yeah, but they essentially, the buyer basically sold it the following month.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and they didn't do anything to it. You can see all that they may have done is they weed whacked the front of the yard. They went ahead and posted it for, for $25,000 over what they paid, and then they sold it as is.
Yeah, they actually did a pretty good job of just making it more sellable, kind of clearing up the yard a bit and cleaning things up a little bit there and just relisting it. That's what we would suggest in a lot of cases, because we tend to get in at a low enough price that we don't have to rehab or remodel properties. We can usually sell them based on just our buying alone, if you just make it more presentable.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So here we can see this from 2024. They just went ahead and accessed the property, changed the locks, turned around and sold it quickly and made 20 plus $1,000 on it. Now maybe it'd be worth it to fix it up and clean it up, but sometimes it's just better to move on to and go ahead and sell it. Here's the next property that we're going to be looking at.
And was that a lien, or was it? That's just we're talking about. That's North Carolina deed.
Yeah, these are tax deeds that were acquired. So they just purchased that one for 11,000, turned around and sold it for 35,000.
Oh, sorry, my brain got mixed up with the last webinar there for a second.
Yeah, yeah. So this is a tax deed that was purchased in North Carolina. This was purchased for $9,276. We can see some of the kind of details in it. About 2,000 square feet. The county has a value of about 87,000.
But clearly, it was a pretty good deal. This one looks nice.
Well, you can see that it needs some work, but it definitely has a plenty of value when they picked it up for, $9,200. Now, one thing I was looking at it, you can see that it needs work. Obviously, we have some stuff boarded up, but what I was concerned about was, is the roof, and is the roof okay? And you can see that the roof, probably can use some things to it, but it does have a newer roof on it, and then it's also brick, and it's valued at about 144,000.
Yeah, we're suckers for brick homes. We do love, a little small brick home like that. And the roof on it is a good sign. Even if it needs additional work, at least you have somebody that was investing money into it to, to fix the condition, to make it more usable. And so that's usually what we're looking for. Just signs that somebody has invested some money into it at some point to care for it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So if it picked up for under 10,000, has a value of 144,000, let's say 150 once it's rehabbed. Let's say that they put 40,000 into it. They're into it at 50,000, they have a chance to make 100,000. Even if they were to put, 80,000 into it, they'd still have, or 60,000 into it, they'd still have, a good opportunity to double their money, if not, triple their money, depending on the deal.
Yeah, that's a good deal. It's
It,
making me jealous of opportunities there.
Yeah, yeah. Here's another property that was picked up. You can see the county records are a little bit different per county record. But
Oh,
here,
that's really nice.
yeah, now this one was picked up. They paid a little bit more for this property. They paid 20 grand for it.
Oh, that still is. That's awesome.
Yeah, and here's what the property is valued at about 150. So at 20 grand, what we always say is we're looking at, we are judging the book by the cover. So in looking here at the roof looks great. The brick looks great.
Well, and I didn't see what year it was built in that, what was it, 64. Well, one thing you can tell about this property is, it very much looks like a 1964 property, but it's one that has been, looks like, continuously updated and, kept in good condition. I wouldn't be surprised if there are long-term or long-time owners, but you can see just the general condition of the property is better than average. And uh, I mean, for that reason alone, it would be worth paying 20,000, for this property, because I don't think it's going to need the same level of work that maybe some of the other properties might. You can probably get by with a very limited rehab on this one, or no rehab at all, and still do 100,000 plus on this property. I mean, the buyers that picked it up for 20,000, if they walk away at that price, they'll easily do that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, a great deal. You know, you can see the house next door needs a little work. In fact, that actually looks almost exactly like one of the houses that we own in Arkansas. It's the red brick with the two windows. I was like, oh my goodness, that looks just like one of the houses we got. But you can see that there's some nice homes in the area. So overall, I think was a pretty good deal.
Yeah, they did so well on that. I mean, they essentially picked it up for 15% of value, which it probably would have been worth paying double that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Here is the next property right here, and it's this one right over here.
That's another nice looking house.
Yeah, and this one was picked up for $10,673.
Oh my goodness. I had no idea North Carolina had such good deals going on.
Yeah, well, what's kind of interesting is some of these went through a process of upset bidding. So, a lot of these didn't sell necessarily right there at the first time. They were some upset bids that went above that.
Well, and maybe people can understand what we mean now by saying, there's additional opportunities that come up with the upset bids as well, because as we're looking at any of these properties, like, would it be worth, doing an upset bid on that property at 20,000? You bet it would. Would this one be worth it? Absolutely. I mean, all of these would be worth doing upset bids because they all of these properties are very similar in their characteristics and in the types of, and we love properties like this. This is probably a property that's been owned by an older person that's lived there for a long time and kept great condition of it, or taking good care of it. That's the perfect property. It's got new roof on it. It has brick, and it's probably been updated on the inside, just like it has been updated on the outside. And that's what we like about it.
Exactly. It was built in 1972, so even though it's a bit older, still in pretty good shape. Get an idea of kind of the homes within the area. We can see some here that have been rehabbed. So really not a bad little house picked up at a pretty good overall price.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, every single one of those last properties, I would jump on, in a heartbeat, and I'd pay 5,000 over, that price on any of them. It would be worth it. Oh, this one's got interior images.
Yeah, included the Google because we could go back. That's the reason we always check both, is to see because maybe one of them might have some photos. Now these are probably old photos, but it still gives us an idea. We can see that, in a way it probably needs a rehab, but there's things about this that you could keep, by changing, I mean, even keeping that wood by changing the flooring, lighting up the flooring, adding some different lights to it. You could really revitalize this and take it from this old 70s feeling into a more modern feeling just by painting. And you could even keep some of this cabinetry just refreshing the paint would give this property a whole new life and get you closer to that $155,000 asking price.
You know what was kind of interesting with that property? Look at those images again. So I think that they took what was originally like an outside balcony area and ended up finishing it off with windows and enclosing the door right there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and then probably this section maybe up here in the front right here.
Uh, I love wood paneling walls, and I love that ceiling.
Yeah, you could definitely, modern it and give it a whole new modern feel. Or it might be better, if instead of setting up a whole power team there is just to go ahead and wholesale it or go through quiet title, clean it up and sell it. That's one of the advantages. We don't always have to rehab these properties. If we get them at the right price, we can resell it to somebody else that's going to do the rehab for us. And we're giving it to them for a discount. They're going ahead and buy it. They can you know, do the rehab. We get a chance to make money. They get a chance to make money, an all around pretty good situation. Here's the next property, and it's actually this house right here. Let's see what they ended up paying up for this one. They ended up paying $27,562.
Holy cow! If that is paying up in North Carolina, we've got to get to some North Carolina sales because that is exactly what we love to see. You know, that's a really nice uh, manufacturer mobile home, like a double wide setup there um, on a foundation. It looks like.
Yeah, well, it's considered real property, so it's on a foundation. It's a full structure. Really, it's not even really a mobile home. It's just a prefab home. It looks like to me. It looks like you've got some type of foundation there underneath it.
Yeah, maybe a good lot too.
Yeah, here's the property. You can see it's 3 bedroom, 2 bath. It was built in 1999,
Oh
and
wow.
they valued it at about 140. So picking it up for $27,562 is really a pretty good deal, especially when we're looking at the condition. Now, this is from 2023. We would, of course, get an on-site evaluation before, you know, buying it, but it's also on a good sized lot. This is an easy property to pick up. Picked it up for the right price, turn around and sell it and make a great profit.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, uh, it's an awesome deal. You know, they picked up at such a low price there at 20,000. They could rent this property out probably for, I'm guessing, $1,000 to $1,500 a month, somewhere in that range. So, based on the prices that they paid alone, you know, I mean, they paid less than 20% for the property to acquire it, and it has the potential to bring that in just income in rental income in like a year and a half, maybe 2 years. So that's incredibly fast for a property like this, and you would still own the property and could continue renting it out as it goes up and increases in value. So you'd be making money through the appreciation as well. Every single one of these little homes we looked at in North Carolina would be perfect for rentals.
Yeah, exactly. Here's the next property we'll look at right here. You'll see that they value it around 82,000. It's a single family home. And we'll always check and look into, some of the sales information. This actually has some of the properties that have sold within the area. So these are going to be good comparables that we can use. There's no photo on it, but we'll look at some of this information and find out more about it, obviously, before purchasing it. But this is the property right here. And one thing that's interesting about it is that it is currently for sale. So they picked it up they actually really paid up for this one. They ended up paying 60 grand for it. But it looks like to me all they've done is secured the property and they're reselling it as is for 125. So they're looking to make, uh, you know, what, 40, yes, 60,000 on it. So, and you can see that it hasn't been rehabbed. They haven't done anything. They haven't even added, new appliances or anything like that. They're just kind of selling it as is. You can see the floor still needs to be worked on. So rehab this property is probably going to be closer to about 200, but they're just trying to sell it if they picked it up. They were into it 60 grand, so maybe they're into it 65 grand and they're just looking to make a quick 60 on it.
Yeah, I think it also illustrates pretty well what we talk about when we talk about setting your max bids and not overpaying, too much for the properties. Because obviously, at 60,000, they did pay up for the property, and I'm sure they'll still be able to sell it here, no problem. They'll be able to make money on it. But clearly, it they have more limited options at 60,000 than they would if they paid a little bit less than that. If they were able to pick up this property for 35 or 40,000, it would be a lot easier for them to move, and there may be additional profitability in it. It would make it worth it to fix it up a bit, in order to sell it. Because it doesn't look like it needs that much work. I mean, this is the kind of property you could probably do a lipstick rehab on and make it look excellent. It'd probably be a really good candidate for that if you wanted to put the time into it. Or if you paid a good low price, you could just turn around and sell it. Even at 60,000, they'll still be able to probably double their money.
Yeah, well, I think at the 125 they're asking, it obviously is going to need a new roof. It's going to need a full rehab. So I think this house is worth over 100,000 that they're asking for it. But they just listed it for sale. It's only been listed for sale for a little bit. I think they're just trying to blow it out. If they can make an extra 60, they can double up their money on a deal. then it's going to be worth it for them to sell it quickly. Maybe it's because they're out of state investor. Maybe it's just some local guy who wants to get his money out of it quickly. But, they're going to definitely, they're selling it at that price knowing that it's going to need a full rehab and the new roof.
Well, and if you think about it, when would it not be worth it to buy and double up your money within a month? Yeah, I think that would almost always, be worth it, especially if you paid more for a property than you wanted to, then doubling up on your money, it would be a great thing. If you pay low enough prices, you can do better than doubling up your money. But again, you can't do that with every single deal. These are great examples though of properties that were picked up at amounts ranging from $10,000 up to $60,000 on homes that are all profitable and all have, good rental potential as well. These have been really impressive tax sale properties.
Yeah, yeah, they are interesting. Here's another property that ended up selling. It's actually this property right here, but a lot of the property value is actually in the land. This one they ended up paying up a bit for as well. They ended up paying $35,000 for this one. But really, a lot of the value is that this is on 5.5 acres. There's still some value in this little home, and it would be a pretty easy home to go ahead and rehab and fix up. But really, the 5.5 acres in this area is where a majority of this $220,000 value is. So even at this, they picked it up for 20 cents on the dollar, something like that, with this big 5-acre lot.
Yeah, it's another screaming deal where, I mean, at 35,000, yeah, they're under 20% for it. And there's a ton of profitability. I mean, yeah, they could make 150,000 plus on, on a property like this. And we do like this simplicity of the house itself. And, at least if we're going to deal with it with an older house, we at least want it to be small and simple, so that fixing it up is not going to be overly complicated.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, and they've got this massive lot. Somebody might buy this property and put on a brand new big home. But it goes all the way down here and all the way back there. So really, really good piece of land. I mean, the land itself, looking at some of the comps in the area, 5 acres was going for over 100 grand,
Mm.
150 grand. So I think the land itself is really gonna be a good buy for them. Here's another one of the properties. You can see built in 1970. It's about 1,700 square feet. And here's the property right
Oh,
here.
wow, that's really nice too.
And they actually paid $4,100 for this property.
What? 4,100?
Yeah,
Oh, I'm gonna be sick.
yep, 4,100.
It's got to be worth 150,000.
Well, it's about worth about 105. So it makes a little bit, and you can see that the roof needs some work. But back here, this photo's a couple of years old, but it was still being lived in. We're still at a brick home, and Zillow, I think, has this home between 105 to 125, depending on which one you're looking at.
That's
But for five
insane.
grand,
I mean, they could turn around and list it at 50 and make 10 times their money on it and probably sell it quick.
yeah, well, it was built in 1970. It's on a full 1 acre lot. It's 3 bedroom, 1 bath, 1,000 square feet. This is an easy home to do what Shade was talking about earlier, doing a lipstick rehab. Now, maybe we have to improve the roof or repair the roof. That's, maybe we're into it 20 grand after that. You turn around and sell it for, 110, 120. You could still make between 70 to 80, 90 grand on it. Or like Shade said, you could go ahead and sell it as is, sell it for 50 or 60,000, and then at that deal, that's going to be worth it for another investor to go ahead and pick that property up and rehab it because there's still going to be profit for them. So that's our strategy. We're trying to sell it as quickly as possible so that we can take our funds and put them back into more property. So our money is constantly making our money, making us more money. We're not just sitting on it.
Oh, and by the way, Michael, you're wondering where this list came from. I think we pulled this list from the auction calendar. It was just at the bottom of the auction calendar for the, I think it was like the 4th of next month.
Yeah, well, this one, actually, I was wrong. This one is at this one right here is at $4,100 right now. It's going through upset bid,
Oh,
so it's at $4,100 now. Yeah, this is actually, I looked at a couple of different counties, because I had to go back into past sales. So these, there's going through Scotland County and Guilford County, a couple of different counties. But this one here, this is the reason I forgot to mention it. This one is currently an upset bid, and we're going to look at one more that's in the upset bid. So, this particular property in Scotland County is on the upset sell list. So if you go look for Scotland County, this would be a property that essentially within the next 10 days, within the next probably few days, they'll either have somebody else do an upset bid at a higher percentage, and then it'll go for another 10 days, or if nobody does, then they would go ahead and own the property and win it at that point.
well, and you would think at $4,500, that it would get an increased bid, or that people might bid up that price a bit, and that it could still end up in the auction for a little bit. No, I think the North Carolina auctions are on site only.
Most of these are all going to be on-site auctions. Now, they do have some online auctions, but the ones that we're looking at right now are some of the results through some of the on-site auctions that were taking place.
So if you do live there, really, I mean, that's how these people are getting these opportunities, is because they're the only locals, that are attending the sale and that can bid on some of this stuff. So, the fact that you have to be there in order to place an upset bid, puts you within, a rare, small group of people that have the ability to even do that. And so, yeah, I mean, I would say that Michael, and also anybody else that's from North Carolina, it would be a great idea to track down and to track some of these sales, because obviously they have some really good deals that are happening, and they're still doing it on site and in person, which it's only going to happen for so much longer before they switch over to an online auction system like everybody else.
Yeah, well, and this upset bid system makes it unique out of any other state. So even out-of-staters many times can try bidding on these properties without attending the auction, as long as the county will allow anyone to go ahead and do an upset bid. So, this property could still be into play. In fact, we're going to look at one more property here. We can see that the county has valued it at 1.5 on $1.6 million. You can see that it has over 80 acres. In fact, if we look at the land itself,
My goodness, 80 acres.
why is it not working?
Oh, it's 104 acres.
Yeah, 104 acres. And then, the home, we can look a little bit more
It was
at.
built in 2007, so it's a new house too.
Yeah.
It's like a 6-bedroom, or no, it's a 4-bedroom, 4-bath.
Yeah, in fact, let me grab that parcel number and we'll look at the map quick. This will be the last one we look at before we go back over, but I think it's interesting to look at the GIS map on it. What?
I think you've got something else recorded on it. You probably need to recopy it.
I was looking at it earlier.
I think it's just extra space or something.
That may be true. Well, let me try one other way. I'll look by the name. If not, we'll just go look at it either way.
You missed one of the numbers. There you go. Yeah, so it's on both sides of that street, we can see. And it's a lot of farmland. You can see that at least half of it is currently being farmed, and then you can see the residential lot right down there. That it looks very nice. That's an amazing house. This is, say, $1.2 million, what the county says it's worth.
I think it was 1. We can go look
Well,
at it.
and what is the opening bid amount for it?
Well, it's an upset bid right now at $49,041. So about $49,000 an upset bid.
So Most of the properties we've looked at tonight have been properties that are valued between like, 100,000 and 200,000. But if this property actually goes to auction, which I don't know if it will or not, I mean, it doesn't seem like,
It's already an auction. It's an
I, I,
upset bid.
yeah, I guess
They've already lost their chance to redeem the property because it's already been sold in the upset bid.
that is
It's just
insane.
whoever's going to do a higher upset bid could have the chance of picking it up.
Could you imagine owning like a $1.2 million property without any liens against it and losing it to a foreclosure, for less than $30,000 or $40,000? That is pretty insane. But clearly, I mean, this property would be worth. I mean, this kind of property you could pay a good high percentage for. You could pay 50% for this property, and it would probably still make sense. But I don't think it's going to sell for anywhere near there. It's only at 40,000 right now. I'd be surprised if this property sells for more than 300,000.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure it's going to go through a series of upset bid offers on it. But, to kind of get an idea of what it is here, we can kind of see it. And you can see it's all of this farmland on both sides. And as we go down
It,
and take a closer look, it really is kind of a mansion.
yeah, it's like what, 6 or 7,000 square feet, and on a whole bunch of land. Yeah, that is like a compound there. Yeah. So the upset bid, to explain this to you again, it is in the same way, how some auctions have an extended period for the ending on it, where if it gets a bid, it will extend it for another few minutes. Well, that's kind of what the upset bid is for North Carolina, only rather than it being an online system that's for a few minutes, it's kind of an in-person system that is for 10 days. So it just means that they hold the sale and there will be a high bidder that will leave the sale, but there's a 10-day period after that where another bidder can come in with a higher bid. And when they place their bid, it starts another 10-day, upset bid period there, where if another bidder wants to bid higher, they have that 10-day period to do that, and they could bid it up again. But once the 10-day period comes and goes, then they will, award you, or basically say you're the winner of the property once it's been 10 days without an upset bid coming in. And so it's basically how they establish a high bidder after the auction. So you've got the opportunity to win the properties at auction, but then you also have an opportunity to win the properties after the auction in upset sales. And we've seen multiple properties that would have been worth bidding on in the upset sales tonight. All of those would have been worth throwing out prices on.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So what we wanted to show you is there's good opportunity, and really, if we look into every state, there's going to be some good opportunities. It may not be every auction, but if we look over at a period of time, and so a lot of the states that you're in, if we're in a redemption deed state or a tax deed state, it's worth looking into the strategies. Even if you're in a tax lien certificate state, maybe you don't invest all of your money into it, but maybe it's worth it, especially if they have some type of live auction, to attend a tax lien sale. But even if you don't, there can be states around you that have opportunity. And so, hopefully we give you an idea of properties that have sold and a couple of properties that are currently on the upset bid process. In fact, that's something that we do is we add upset bid list to our auction calendar, because in a way those properties are still in play.